Hi there, I'm Doug from the residential property team here at Leicester Aldridge, and welcome to another episode of Property Particulars podcast. Today, my guest is Phoebe Chandler from our Bournemouth office. Hi, Phoebe, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you for making the trip up to London.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. So let's start a bit about you. Obviously, you and I know each other and we work together on different things, which we'll come on to later. But what is your LA journey today? How long have you been with Leicester Aldridge? And yeah, tell me a little bit about you and where you've come from.
So I have been at Leicester Aldridge for just over 6 years.
Okay.
The day that I qualified was the day that I had my first day at LA. So I remember being upstairs in the health and safety training and just being like, can I go on to the roll of solicitors on the SRA website? Because it hits like 9:30
Yeah.
and then everybody gets published. And I remember just being upstairs in the training and I was like, this is really, really surreal. So it was qualifying as a solicitor, starting my first day, like my
Wow.
dream job. Lovely, gorgeous, fancy offices.
That's pretty cool that
Yeah, it was
that,
very, very
that
exciting.
coincided like
Yeah,
that.
it was very
Yeah,
exciting.
that does takes me back a bit. That bit about when you get on it's quite a cool thing, isn't it, to get on the electoral roll?
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
it's just like going onto the website and actually seeing your name. And it's like, I've worked so long for this and
Yeah.
it's actually happening.
You are now a solicitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. And so you qualified into so sometimes I'll say real estate team, but we have a few different names for it. So tell me a little bit about that.
So it's the real estate commercial team down in Bournemouth, and we've got a matching team in the Southampton office. So the way I usually explain what we do is at Leicester Aldridge, we've got obviously the dedicated resi team, which
Yeah.
is your team. We've got a specialist development team. We've got a real estate finance team. And then we've got like our construction and development team. And then anything that doesn't really fit into any of those nice neat boxes
Yes.
tends to fall on my desk.
Okay.
So anything, obviously commercial property, but all sorts of weird and wonderful transactions or
Okay.
anything from you guys that isn't quite the norm,
Yeah.
we would step in and help with that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. I mean, and that's such a good help for us because that comes up so often these days that we will get clients asking us, can you just do this?
Yeah.
And obviously we try and help, but then when we look into it a bit more, we then realize it's probably not quite our pure resi remit.
Yeah.
So leading on straight from that, so some of the things that you and I have worked together or our teams have that I've maybe referred back to you is exactly that scenario. So I might have a client telling me that they've had an offer accepted on a property. Can I do it? I've even probably gone as far as quoting for
Yeah.
it because they've told me it's resi.
Yeah.
And then I get the heads of terms, and that's a good giveaway. You get heads of terms.
Yes.
You don't get a memo of sale.
No.
And then I'm reading it and going, this is not me. This is a commercial transaction.
Yeah.
It might have an element of resi.
Yeah.
And so then I've maybe passed it over to you and your team.
Yes.
And so, yeah, from your side, how does that work?
So usually, as you say, you don't actually find out until a little bit later down the line.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's a block of 2 flats, but actually there's a shop underneath, which might be on a commercial lease. So there's different bits that we would get involved with there. We would work with you guys who would do the residential reporting, and then we would deal with the commercial side. So you've got different tax liabilities involved, and then you've got different contracts for commercial properties. You've got different commercial property inquiries that we deal with. So, and then often the leases are different. So you've got a residential lease and then you have a commercial lease.
Yeah.
And the makeup of those can be quite different. So
Yeah.
it's sort of figuring out which way it's going to go. And then obviously the bit, usually, as I say, it's the ground floor, it's a shop or it's an office. We would deal with that bit. You guys would take care of the upper floors, which would be the flats, and then just bring it all together.
Yeah, but quite often then the whole my clients will then ask me a question as to why I'm kind of handing it over, but it's because it's become a commercial contract rather than a residential contract. So it's maybe led by you.
Yes.
With me dipping in and out, just doing a small element of it.
Yes, yeah, and it's the business element and sort of then, but also it might involve employees if there's employees that are being taken over as well. So then we've got the corporate team getting involved. So it does tend to be sort of a mix of everybody bringing it all together.
Yeah. And I think you guys are so much more experienced in running transactions across different teams.
Yes.
I suppose, I mean, I have a bit of background in that because I was a development lawyer before I became a residential one, so I know a little bit, but I mean, that was a while ago now. But yeah, I suppose we don't have that day-to-day practice of kind of managing for a client to maybe be that main contact for that client, but you're actually then managing clients internally, so to speak, because your client becomes other teams around the
Yes.
firm,
Yeah.
and you're chasing up me to get the residential report back so that you can report.
Yes.
How do you find that? How do you manage that?
I think it's really lovely, actually. I think it's quite nice to actually be able to work with other departments in the firm,
Yeah.
and also to be able to comfort clients in knowing that we can deal with absolutely everything.
Yes.
And just saying, oh, you know, even if you've just got a query about something and it's something really, really small, and it's like, oh, Danielle in our corporate team, she's the perfect person to answer that question, and it's just a quick
Yes.
pick up the phone. I think it's really nice how all the teams interact with each other.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, I definitely phoned Danielle quite a few times on things. I'm sure she gets annoyed with me. And equally, like sometimes I'll have clients just asking me, like that kind of that 10-minute intro conversation with the client just to kind of establish a bit more.
Yeah.
But then I do have a lot of commercial clients, I act for them just in the residential, but they might just be purely buying commercial leases or remortgaging.
Yeah.
And then actually to be able to call you and get one of your team just to actually, because sometimes I don't know, the client's telling me and I'm like, I think you need to speak to one of my colleagues.
Yeah.
And so to be able to get you to just call them and dissect it for me is such an important tool as well.
Get to the bottom of it, and then
sometimes it might not even be you. Then you tell me this needs to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right that we across LA as a whole we have that kind of ease that we can just pick up the phone quickly and speak to other people in other teams.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the other bit I wanted to ask you, because you are part of a new team within commercial property that we're trying to pilot a bit in. So tell me a bit about that, because that also resonates quite well with some of the work that we do.
So it's our new borrower real estate finance team.
Yeah.
So we're finding in the market that quite a lot of law firms either do deal with borrower finance transactions, but they perhaps don't quite understand lender requirements in their entirety. And at Leicester Aldridge, we obviously act for some of the big lenders in the market, and they're also finding, so that team is also finding on the other side of transaction, borrower solicitors, if you've got a solicitor that's dealt with lending from the bank beforehand, and they know the requirements and they know what inquiries are going to be raised and what searches are going to be needed, you can actually get a transaction across the line a lot quicker. So we've sort of realised that there's a bit of a gap in the market for that. So we've decided to launch this new borrower dedicated real estate finance team in the hope that eventually we will have worked with so many lenders that we know, Handelsbanken, for example, they require a wet ink signed instruction letter and they have to have it sent back in the post, no DocuSign. Same with the report on title. So you submit your report on title, but it has to be wet ink signed in the post. Whereas another solicitor who perhaps hasn't acted borrowing from Handelsbanken before might not know that. So it's learning all the quirks and learning all of the inquiries that are sort of deal breakers that you absolutely have to get sorted to be able to preempt what exactly the lender's going to be asking for. And then hopefully say to our client, well, we know exactly what they're going to need.
That's helpful.
Get a transaction across the line a lot quicker.
Exactly. And also within this, you're going to be you do already do some of the more complex bridging financing. Which we like to steer clear of because it can be a bit of a minefield and a lot more complex than, I suppose it comes with the fact that it is bridging, so it's kind of a shorter term loan for that client for whatever particular reason. But do you find that is there a lot of that coming through? Have you seen that come across your desk now?
I think more and more, and I think bridging is another thing where quite a lot of law firms won't deal with it. My colleague and I, for some reason, we've just decided that we absolutely adore it. I think it's just so nice to have a transaction on your desk because they usually are a little bit tricky or a little bit complicated. And it's nice to be able to work with the broker, work with the client, work with the lender and the lender solicitor to actually be able to fix the problems and get a deal done. And we're also finding that clients are purchasing at auction without having their finance arranged.
Of course,
and then obviously bridging is usually the quickest way to get finance arranged rather than a high street lender, just because
Okay.
the turnaround times are a bit slower. So yeah, bridging is, we're definitely seeing a lot more of it, and we do really enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting as well, linking it with the auction side of stuff. I've definitely seen in our team just inquiries for auction stuff. I think has definitely increased in the last year. I don't know whether it's a knock-on effect from after lockdown and COVID, but possibly. But yeah, it's just interesting that's come in a lot more, and that I can see how the bridging kind of sits with that quite well.
Yeah, it's usually because with an auction, there's going to be some sort of quirk about the property or about the title, which is why it possibly hasn't sold on the market normally. And it's usually maybe one of those reasons why a high street lender might not be able to lend because of some quirk, or as I say, it could be anything really. So that's where we find, bridging lenders are able to come in and sort of bridge the gap until your client completes the purchase, maybe fixes whatever the issue is, and then exits via a term loan in a year's time or 9 months' time.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, thank you for that. I'm hoping that I'm sure we'll be working even closer together. You guys with this new team will come up to London to kind of assist more, and we'll pass more between the two teams. So thank you for that. Let's change a little bit to some of the more funner aspects of our podcast. So Property Particulars is the name. So your own Property Particulars, have you bought and sold a property before? Was it stressful? Were you a good client?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I was a good client. You have to ask Suki. So I was lucky enough to be able to deal with my purchase in-house.
Right.
Was about 5.5 years ago, I bought a new build property. So yes, it was very stressful. But it was nice knowing that it was in very, very safe hands. So our completion date, I think we were due to complete around September time. As with new builds, it was slightly delayed and further delayed and further delayed. And I think we actually ended up completing on the 14th of December.
Wow.
Mortgage offer expired, beginning of December, emergency 2-week extension, calling the mortgage broker. Can you pull any strings with Barclays, please?
Yeah, sure.
So it was a very, very stressful experience as a buyer, especially being a first-time buyer. Because normally it's like, oh, you're exchanging on Friday, you're completing next Friday, you'll probably have the keys around lunchtime, happy days. Whereas we were like in the sales office going, we still noticed that they haven't put that window in, or we still noticed that the floor's not down, like peering through the windows at night. And it's like, what's going on? When are we going to be in? And then you get that call from the developer's solicitor saying your completion date's been scheduled. Here's your premier warranty for your 10-year guarantee certificate. And you are buying a house in 2 weeks' time.
So you kind of, I suppose, tick the box there for quite a lot of things that we deal with for our clients. So I do quite a lot of development purchase work. So we're on panels for certain developments. But it is, I have, sometimes it's investor clients, and they're maybe a little bit more relaxed in the purchase deadline and the notice period. But yeah, for clients that are buying to move in for a new build, it can be stressful with that time period, because it's all linked to practical completion of the actual build.
Yes.
So it can't be any quicker sometimes.
No, exactly. And it's waiting for building control to go in and sign everything off, which then allows your new warranty to be signed off. But also it was like, well, when can I have my fridge delivered?
More importantly, the furniture or anything like that.
There's a 2-month wait for my sofa. Do I book it in now, or am I potentially not going to be in until January? So it was,
exactly. That sounds like quite a lot of the conversations I have with some of my clients, and they want to know those bits. And actually, interestingly, post-pandemic, because obviously the construction industry was affected quite a lot by that. That all of the projects that we were doing for buying clients all did get delayed a bit. So we became a bit of a counsellor to some of our clients during that process. But it's all good in the end, because then you have the beautiful brand new property to move into. So it all works out good in the end.
Absolutely, it did.
Amazing. Okay,
we're still there now.
Excellent. All right, thank you. All right, to finish up with, I'm gonna do some quick fire questions to see just to finish up. So, what is your favourite area on the South Coast?
Well, I would have to say it's Lymington. That's where I live, and I'm very, very lucky to live there. Yes, so it's just, well, I think technically it is in the New Forest, so it's just outside of the actual New Forest. So we're right by the seaside. We've obviously got the New Forest. We're close enough to the beach. Yeah.
Do you know what? I went to Lymington on holiday when I was a kid.
Did you?
Yeah.
So many people say that.
Yeah, like when we lived up in Scotland and we came down one
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Well, that's a
have
journey.
yeah, I have really magical memories of it, and like the little shops that we, you know, as kids you go to and spend your pocket money on
Yep.
holiday. Oh, well, that's lovely. Yeah, I love that. And what is the best thing about your job?
Ooh, what is the best thing about my job? Working with lovely people, and obviously cross referrals between teams, working with other
Yes.
people in other offices. Having the opportunity to go to our other offices means been up to London a few times now. Obviously, we've got our lovely new Southampton office.
Yes.
And I think sort of bringing it back to bridging, it's problem solving. I like being able to work with other people in a transaction and actually be able to say, we know exactly how we can fix this,
Cool.
and coming to the other end of a
Yeah,
transaction
yeah.
and getting a positive result for everyone.
Exactly. Okay, cool. One last quick fire,
Go on
which
then.
kind of connected a bit to that. So, what's maybe the most expensive property transaction you've been involved with, or the most interesting?
Ooh, it was expensive and interesting, actually. So we acted not on the borrower side, we act for a couple of bridging lenders.
Okay.
And one of my clients loans over agricultural land.
Okay.
So we lent about, I think it was about £10.3 million, which is obviously a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Over this gorgeous farm, manor house, acres and acres of land. The borrower used a couple of the fields to ride their horses for their social, their downtime.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that was very, very interesting to see
Yeah.
how the other half live.
Yeah, exactly. I think whenever you have a transaction and you're into the double figures of millions,
Yes.
it becomes interesting just from a little bit of our nosiness anyway.
Absolutely.
Because we work in property. When we want to have a look where it is, we'll go on Google Maps. And,
Exactly. Yeah, you want to see
exactly.
the pictures in the valuation.
Definitely. So I am there with you. I'm totally on that. All right, Phoebe, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Property Particulars.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. Join us again soon for another episode of Property Particulars, and make sure you check our social channels. Our Instagram is @Leicester Aldridge Property.